is a Spelljammer?
Spelljammer. Well, the game itself came out in the 80s. It is basically D&D in space. It is D&D and Star Trek had a baby, and here, go travel the stars.
Right.
Get in your ship. Go see the cosmos, everlasting.
Interspherical travel.
Interspherical travel. All of the solar systems are encased in these crystalline spheres. It's a great throwback to like original like concepts in astronomy, like the beliefs that we're all in these crystalline spheres, and like what is the Greeks that thought we floated in the phlogiston.
Right.
And so that concept is in there. The idea that there's this ethereal gas that flows through space, and it allows you to, if you catch its winds, its cosmic winds, it will propel you between spheres. But it's basically like, hey, if you can't do some kind of long range teleport or whatever, then hey, you're gonna have to get there somehow, right?
You gotta get there somehow, and so how does one get from point A to point B in the Spelljammer setting? Like, what is the mechanism by which we sail the stars?
Well, you have to be a caster.
Okay.
And I just kind of kept that. A lot of the stuff I kept.
Yeah.
But you basically, there's a special helm. I imagine it as like a non-lethal electric chair, kind of, where you kind of strap yourself in, and there's, crystals and diodes, and you get a helmet on, and you close the caster in there, and they become one with the ship. One of the descriptions in there in the book where it talks about like what it's like to bond with the ship, where you are the ship and your perception is of the ship.
Yeah.
When the ship gets damaged, the caster feels it takes damage.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put your you have to be a fully rested caster in order to even crank one of these things up.
Right.
But it allows you to use your imbuing your magical ability to allow this thing to fly up. That's your standard. Then you got the dwarves, of course, have to be different. So
of course.
they use forges and the power of creation and might and to power their ships, to propel them. The gnomes, of course, they're kind of steampunk. It's these weird contraptions and like almost like a Rube Goldberg machine that'll, once it gets started, well, it starts flying, and sure, why not?
So in typical D&D fashion, there's like this. Every race has their own peculiar, weird, idiosyncratic way of sailing through the stars. But at the end of the day, you've got a sword in one hand, a spell in the other, and you're swinging from a rope from one galleon across the gulf of space. Mm-hmm. And it's turned out to be like a really awesome campaign. And so what I'm kind of curious about is what was it about the setting that initially drew you in? Like, we didn't play this in 2nd edition when we played 2nd edition. It wasn't one of our go-to settings.
No, not at all. In fact, our DM at the time, he's told me about it because he knew I was a huge Trekkie. I mean, I just am. And so he told me about it, and I was always kind of in the back of my head, and I'll never forget, I was at Half Price Books, and these two boys right here were $10 a piece.
Yeah.
And that's all you really need to play the game. It didn't have the maps and the whole pack or anything.
Yeah.
But I bought them. I read them both twice. And I think at the time I was watching Star Trek Voyager, finishing my Star Trek, like, every episode ever, everything that's ever been made by Star Trek, watching.
Yeah.
And it was just a perfect confluence of because we've been playing D&D for 16 years straight almost.
Yeah.
So that's already there.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of watching Star Trek. I find Spelljammer, and so I just start thinking. I've always loved the idea of the Prime Directive.
Yeah.
And just what that really means. Mm-hmm. You're willingly withholding a technology from a lower species for a reason, and eventually that reason is null and void. Mm-hmm. And then they can travel the void.
They get to do whatever they want. Once they reach that plateau, the rest of the world is open up to the rest of the galaxy. That
was my starting point. Like, I wanted that to be... I wanted y'all to be on a planet that was under lockdown of some way. Mm-hmm. And the whole beginning of the thing is this planet is now free to roam the galaxy, and they've met the terms of whatever was put down, and... Mm-hmm. And now they can travel the cosmos and basically do their 5-year mission to explore brave new worlds.
That kind of pre-game prep where the DM is I mean, you're playing the game, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just the DM at that point.
Oh yeah.
And the DM, you're prepping things. So how did you go about prepping for this game? Was there any conversion work? Did you make up a lot of stuff yourself?
Well, yes. I mean, most of the stuff I made up was just the background. Just the information about the dwarves, about the elves, about the humans and their relationship. Who controls what sections of space, that kind of thing. Reading the books and looking at 5th edition, the way they've kind of pared 5th edition back down from like 3rd and 4th a little bit. I mean, I didn't have to convert a lot I mean, we've played recent adventures where I just handed y'all the book. Y'all wanted to upgrade your ship, and you're just using the same stats that are out of this book because when you look at them versus 5th edition and the rules in the DMG, the damages are pretty close, and it's just like there's really not a lot to convert. There's a great random chart in there for creating planetary systems, and I've done that with every sphere that I've created.
Right.
And so what comes of that is what I decide to create, then I just lay my story over the top of it. But as far as what I was watching and everything that led into that, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I was watching Star Trek. Yeah. Obviously, watched a little Star Wars. Firefly, without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
I mean, it is exactly what y'all are doing. What the crew of the Serenity does.
Pretty much.
I mean, because that's how I envisioned the game. I was like, I want them to be the crew of the Serenity doing whatever the hell they want to do.
Right.
And I didn't want to impose a story on y'all. I wanted to just for there to be a foundation of story for y'all to traipse across.
There's a structure to the game that you've it's clear that there's background elements in play that when we do one thing, if we upset the high elves, they sort of, in some parts of the galaxy, they've got more control than others, and some that's the dwarves. And so it's clear that you put a lot of thought into the setup of the game. And I can recall, like, well before we ever sat down and playing, like the two of us just talking about how you run a sandbox, how you create adventures out of random tables. Yeah. And so it's pretty clear that you've put a lot of thought into how the world works, and that's given you a tool set, because a lot of your adventures, by your own admission, are just like, we show up, it's time to play, and you're like, well, let's see what the adventure is today, and you kind of roll it up. And like, how do you as a DM go about it, creating an adventure from those random tables that you've got and turning it into something really memorable?
I created the random table, which was just literally from playing Mass Effect and writing down literal missions and playing FTL, which is an amazing game. You should play it. And just writing down the missions the random things that you come across and how you can interact with them. Just because that's all I wanted to do was have random things. So I have a list of like 20 to 40, depending on what I roll on, what table I roll on. Yeah. Of just like, is it a comet? Do you find a survivor? Is there an intruder? Is there a broken up ship? Is there a random planet? Is there a broken sphere? I mean, I just started listing all of the things that you could possibly encounter in the cosmos, and just kind of pared that down to as tight of a list as I could. And then there are two that come to mind right now. It was when y'all initially left the first sphere, the Nerosphere, and it was a completely random, because it was all just travel time. So I rolled, it was like, it's going to take 29 days, and there's rules in there for altering the days depending on spatial conditions, the fluxes in the flow and stuff like that. So it was going to take y'all 29 days. Yeah. And I rolled y'all three random encounters. One was a rogue planet. One was something about slavers, and then the third was the Neogi. Well, the Neogi in the Spelljammer setting are slavers. Right. So I put the slave base on the rogue planet, and they're revolving around. They're kind of patrolling around it. So you are going through the flow, and all of a sudden there's a gap in the Phlogiston. There's just a hole in space, and you see this planet in the distance that has two. And again, this planet I rolled completely randomly, but it had two moons that were fire-based. So fire in the Phlogiston is a no-no. Right. If there is any fire, it's all flammable. So if you set any kind of fire in the Phlogiston, it immediately erupts into a bigger fire. Right. And just keeps expanding. So it had two moons orbiting it that were on fire. Basically, I just saw it as kind of thrusters, just propelling this planet through space. And the Neogi had built a base on it for their slaves, and they just patrol around it and follow this planet through space, and it's just like a moving planet or slave colony. Yeah. And so that was it. And y'all rolled up in there, y'all freed some slaves, got some loot, you got the Neogi's data, so you actually dodged the Neogi on the way out of the planet and made it to the next sphere. And I thought that was completely awesome, and that was a completely randomly rolled encounter.
And so the other one that comes to mind for me is one of our latest adventures. We're coming back from sort of hightailing it out of a sphere where we got a little too close to the authorities and we needed to lay low for a while, and we're on our way back, and there's like this ice chunk comet thing, and then it's like, well, what are we going to do here? We've got to go surf this thing. We've got to go get up close and surf the wake of this comet, and then finds out, okay, wait, this comet is formed around a capsule of some kind. It turns out it's the Dwarven hero.
Yeah.
And then where we show up and it's like, hey, we found this guy in deep space and now we're the heroes for rescuing him. And so they're just really memorable events that come from just random die rolls.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that was going to be my second one, actually, because I rolled two things. I rolled a comet, and you found a lone survivor that was friendly.
Yeah.
And so in the bigger picture of the game, in the past, the dwarves had been attacked by some beholders during the second the second interspherical war. And there was nothing to do but open a portal to the negative energy plane at the heart of the Dwarven homeworld as the beholder fleet was attacking it in order to suck them into the fleet also.
Right.
And so the prime forger of the Dwarven empire, like the head smith, had created this contraption, and he basically Vulcan-style sucks his own planet into a black hole along with the enemy fleet, saving the retreating forces off the planet.
Right.
And it was thought he's lost forever. And here we are, almost 2.5 centuries later.
Yeah.
And y'all find an escape pod lodged in a comet that had a perfect figure 8 orbit around 2 spheres, where there's colonies.
Yeah.
And so there you go.
So hopefully somebody finds
Hopefully will find it one day, and y'all happen to be the ones, and you basically get to have your end of A New Hope moment with the dwarves, where they bestow the highest honor that they can. Never happened on any non-dwarf in history, and y'all were the first.
So that was a really cool moment. And there's been a lot of great moments where because we have so much downtime. It's like we have 62 days of traveling between encounters. And so while you're rolling up adventures and other things, there's been a lot of free-form role-playing.
A lot.
That's taken place between the different crew members. Who's going to be the captain? Who isn't? Are we running this ship collectively? And just the personalities of the NPCs have gotten pretty outlandish.
It's been great. I love that Emma immediately claimed captainship. I'm the captain.
Yeah.
And that was nobody disputed her.
Disputed her. She can be captain. She gets to use all her spell slots to man the helm.
That's true.
But it's meant that there's been a nice sort of everybody fell into their roles kind of naturally. My character being sort of the intelligence officer, security. I see him as more like half Worf, half I don't know, whoever their intelligence guy is on Next Gen. I can't remember.
Worf is tactical and security.
That's how I see my guy. And then we've got the ship's counselor, Audie's character.
Yeah.
The cleric.
That's definitely Joseph Mendez. He's a rabbi.
Right. And then my brother, Josh's character, the Warforged wizard, Bezalel, who's
a transmuter,
always making some kind of homunculus or monster or golem-ite.
Yeah, the crew on that ship are quite uneasy, actually.
Yeah.
Loud noises all the time.
Loud noises, strange smells, and their captain's a drow, and maybe they're uncomfortable with that.
Maybe.
But it's been a great game to play because we get to be space pirates in D&D.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun encounters. There's a lot of fun setup, and it's one of the games where it's clear that it's kind of hit a stride where it doesn't take a lot of work. You reach that sweet spot in the campaign where our actions and your setup have combined to create like a perpetual adventure machine.
Oh, completely. Yeah, y'all literally like ran hardcore down both through random rolls and how y'all's actions turned out in the initial adventures, and you kind of pissed off this. They're called the Attican Consortium, and they create basically like low rent health potions that get people hooked. So y'all kind of blow up one of their minds. Yeah. But they don't know it.
Oops.
And then the next sphere over, you break into one of their corporate offices, but they don't know it.
They don't know it.
And then that's when you were like, we need to get out of here for a minute. But y'all were like, literally, y'all could have done a third part that would have been kind of a 1, 2, 3 with this one company right off the bat. And it was like, I wrote about 10 other things, but okay, sure.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the way it turned out. And then
that's just how it turns out.
Y'all decided to head back and go another direction, and it's like, okay, cool. Now I get to use all this stuff.
Yeah, and so it's that style of game where it's just let's look at the map. What's over here? Who's over here? Can we find out about this sphere? Where's this thing?
Yeah.
That just picking places to adventure in, particularly because we're looking for like wondrous places, different sampling of the galaxy.
Y'all got to go to a planet where It's so far away from the sun that all the heat is from a ring of fire around it, and that creates nothing but diamonds and glass that rain from the sky every like hour and a half, and there's like horns that sound so everybody can take cover as a glass shower comes by. And y'all like went diamond mining, or no, you went
deep sea diving. Yeah,
diamond diving.
Diamond diving. Yes.
Yeah, because these diamonds just wash up in there, and you had to evade the elves while you did that. And it was, I mean, and all of that was just random shit.
Just random stuff.
And it was just like it's been quite a blast. It's very nerve-wracking. I've never, I mean, you've played with me. I've never completed a campaign as a DM. Yeah. I've always been that DM that's like, I go good, and I'm usually good for 5, 6, 7 adventures sometimes. Yeah. And then I kind of peter out because I'm like, I don't know what to do, because I've wanted to create this whole elaborate story in all 3 acts.
Yeah.
And that's the way I've always, because I'm like, I like telling stories, but it's like, but I'm not telling their story, they're playing their story.
They're playing a story.
And this has been the first time that I've ever DM'd that, and I'm not gonna lie, I went back and watched our episode on homebrewing, and that's literally how I kind of started this, and so here we are.
You know, some DMs can make it work, and they can take the driver's seat, and the players are along for the ride. And if they've got skill with it, if they've got a neat idea, that can be a fun game. But you're right, a lot of times it does peter out, and maybe that's a 5 adventure campaign, and that's the end of it, and you just call it quits and go. But this style of game that you've got going is very much, once it gets wound up, it just goes.
Yeah.
We have a map. We have the means to get somewhere. We're 8th or 9th level-ish. About halfway through 8th level.
Yeah, you're getting close to
like, there's plenty of weird things we can do with 62 days worth of fabricate spells. And, you know, all of the weird things that you can get up to with D&D spellcasting in downtime.
And what I love that y'all have been doing is making liberal use, I mean, within your means, of Glyph of Warding on a ship. Imagine you have Glyph of Warding and all of the time to cast it like 20 times. So over by the mast here, there's a heal. Here's an invisibility. Here's a fly. Oh, they're about to board. Here's
here's whatever you need.
Whatever it is, concentration free. Or it's just like, if you're not one of the crew and you step on that spot, boom.
Yeah. There you go. And so, it's been really fun to have our own ship, and so we've got to do a lot of things. 2 ships now, 4 technically. Technically 4. That's fine.
The Bloodborne, two Bloodborne longbow.
2 little skiffs. So it's been really fun to kind of sit on that side. For me, it's one of the few games I've had where I've had an opportunity to play a character and get really invested in it, and that doesn't usually happen. Really, up until now, there's been maybe 1 or 2 other characters I've had that've been like my characters. Most of the rest of them I've just forgotten about, and that's how my preferred method is DMing. But it's been really fun to get an opposite perspective and be like, this is my character. I don't want to. I'm not going to switch him later on. I'm not going to do anything. I want to see where he goes organically, not plan him out far ahead, just like, what am I going to do with this character?
Zilo's a badass. Let me tell you something that I love, like right when you're ready to switch classes, that Grey Guild comes out, because it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah. The Sterling Vermin Companies, if you've never checked them out, they've got a great blog. They post a lot of stuff on. Grey Guild Wizard is perfect for an espionage information gatherer. Kudos to them.
They have an ability that if you spend less than an hour with them, you have to make an intelligence roll to remember interacting with them.
Yeah, perfect for a rogue.
For a rogue,
arcane trickster,
who is already in disguise as another person, so they don't even remember your alias.
Right.
To point a finger at your alias. Right. That you're not even going to be in. It's been absolutely. I've absolutely loved DMing your character, who is the endless paranoid. Everybody's out to get him. There's a scheme. There's something behind every action. It's probably the High Elves. They're kind of assholes.
Yeah.
In this world,
he opens up in combat. He's kind of like Zilo lives his life like he's in a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah.
And when he's not fighting, he's all stern and dour and kind of petulant. Yeah. But then combat gets going. He's like, "I love you, man."
Yeah.
So it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to play that as opposed to the different NPCs that I usually get to play.
Yeah, most definitely.
But it's been a blast, and it's from friend to friend. It's been great watching you. It's been great watching this be a success, because I've been in campaigns before where I can see and tell, like, it gets to that 5th session and you're like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, from DM to DM, it's like, there's a way out of this, man. And I think you just needed to find a setting and a setup that worked for you, because it's been awesome.
Yeah, it was fun to create. just to give them a quick peek into where this started. Imagine it's because I took from World War I and World War II, okay, and kind of the relations in between those, and what would that would be like if basically the elves were kind of like the Russians, and you know the dwarves are kind of like the Americans and the whatever, and then the Illithids are over there, and they're just kind of assholes,
right?
Because they're Illithids.
But
they're all against the Beholders because the Beholders want to take over everything. Because in Spelljammer, Beholders are a big deal,
yeah,
right? And so the Beholders attack. Well, in a pull from Mass Effect, the elves decide to raise this new race of humans up to help fight because they have prodigious birth rates.
Right.
They're quick to learn to fight.
Right.
And so let's bring them into the stars and help fight these Beholders.
Right.
Dwarves don't like that.
No.
They win. They win the first interspherical war. Second one comes around because the humans, because they're meddlesome, they're curious,
they're humans.
They get into the Beholder territory, kicks off the second one. They eventually win. But because of the actions and the fact that the entire galactic population was just destroyed, not decimated, because that means cut by 1/10. It was cut by like 9/10.
9/10.
And so what happens? The High Elves want to punish the humans, and basically all the human refugees that are left, there's a brain drain because all that's left are refugees, families, and they put them on these black rocks, as I call them. These colonies that aren't allowed any kind of spelljamming technology until they can create it themselves again.
Gotcha.
But no outside interference. So that was that kind of aspect to it.
See, Zilo's right. There's always someone behind the plot. Those damn High Elves are always after him.
Oh yeah, they are. And so, you know, in much like the Solarians and the Krogans in Mass Effect,
of course,
the elves use the humans, and then we're done with you. Go over here and just stay out of our way. And so that's where I don't know. That kind of set it, like that was my first big like, all right, that's where it starts. And y'all start on a black rock, Neros 4. And y'all get off planet, and you know now, you know you've put a thumb in the High Elves' eye. That was good.
Any chance I get.
You've made great friends with the dwarves. I mean, like I said, y'all are basically like the Beatles with the dwarves now.
That's
like,
fine.
Anywhere you go, they're like fangirling over y'all.
They've got a huge armada, and I hope that one day we can lead it into battle against something. But yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of just a wrap up, it's been an amazing campaign so far. I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm glad this is happening with 5th edition because I feel like we've had a chance to just really know the rules inside and out. And I also want to play it and using the Cypher system in Numenera. But that's just me. I want to play everything in Numenera. That's a show for another time.